Okay.
Okay.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
And there is an agenda
Can we
for
just
this.
stay on this call?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Wait, where did Sebnem go?
I don't know if
She
you
was
guys can
just
talk.
here.
Yeah.
But anyway, the call agenda is on the Omega channel, so check that out because that's where it lists what we're doing. It looks like we're looking at practical examples and format guidelines for consilience curation and process creative and energy flows.
Yes, I think we need to embed all the things we are talking about and all these different creative flows and research flows we are just putting into all the work we are doing. So this would be like the embodiment of this and just trying to consilience around how we are creating all these kind of programs related to them.
I kind of started to do that with the here, I'll share really quickly if that's okay. No.
Hello.
Hi.
Now it works.
Hello.
Hey there.
So on the specific project pages, you can kind of start seeing here, for example, the regenerative workflow. You can kind of start seeing how they relate to each other. So for example, like Satori and Jean's DUB Imaginarium calls, it kind of informs the dynamic energy budget technical calls as well. And then from there, we're synthesizing like the prototype. And then for the library, the self-discovery game will be part of the library eventually. So it's kind of starting to connect with each other. But anyway, that's it. Are you able to unmute yet, Sebnem?
Yes. It works now. Super. Yeah. So the agenda. I still have the problems with my sharing screens, and kind of these are the things that I, always push to the end until I have no chance but fix them. But as long as it works somehow, I have them at the end of my to-do list. So if Nick, you want to share the screen with participants or for the recording? And I think you already also introduced very well the agenda of today, right? So basically, first of all, welcome everyone. And I don't know if you want to make a check-in round or connect to the senses. I leave it up to you. If anyone has a 5-minute idea, but just to give an overview, what we want to achieve today in our synchronization is the Tech Omega workflows. And the goal of it is to update our manifesto. So these manifestos are the culture or the cultural build or the social norms. No, it's not even social norms, is it? Anyways, it's not built into the token of Token Engineering Commons, but it's how the organization decides to agree on things and how things are done, so we can actually have some sort of decentralization and autonomy. So every working group has a manifesto. I'm just recapping for those of you who may be joining New Tech or Omega. So this working group Omega manifesto has many sides, and of course it's an attempt to give an overview of how we started working. What are the first principles that we, at least in the beginning over 1.5 years ago, decided we can put together. And now that, and again, Omega, we decide here to explore this decentralized decentralization and autonomy maybe up to its limits, meaning, we said it's not going to be another meeting, another work, another session you have to just get into, but actually a place for people in the space who want to make sense of it all. And because Omega also focuses on token engineering ethos and ethics, it was just important to hold that space and not structure it, but see what emerges. And it seems self-sovereignty, radical inclusion are really things that we value, or people who find their ways here value. And before going in there too much, is that we had some experiments we pulled through, ideating around initiatives, creating common sense over, I would say, an improv phase over a year. But we also managed to go through the structured process of token engineering commons, meaning you make a proposal, meaning you explain why what you're asking support for is going to become a public good for token engineering, hence token engineering commons. And the first initiative that we put through is the token engineering consilience library proposal. So that was an experience, meaning we experimented through this complex, chaotic, rather improvisation like working style together. People came in, came out, we had no roles defined, just, yes, I took the role of steward. And because I really felt that this is important. But now there are just so many more people who feel the importance, and I'm just amazed. Just want to say that that it seems to be working, that people actually connect over values instead of over tasks and assignments and so on. So today, we still want to make this process flow, which is actually defining what it is that we're doing in terms such that it also computes within the predefined rules and guidelines of token engineering commons. So typically, if you go into other working groups, you will meet a Scrum like project execution. And that's what we would call here process flow. So we will have these processes. We have predefined processes for token engineering commons to work. That's how we interact with the augmented bonding curve via means of proposals that have this advice process. Then later on it goes into conviction process. And in between you have all the steps that you need need to take so that these, especially these funding and funds distribution processes are automated against the bonding curve. And they are transparent, they are auditable at any time, and so on. Right now here in this document, I also go in there. We have the basic process flow. Literally, this is what we have done to iterate once through the token engineering commons process. And there are some things I think we should just go through once. Any questions that you might have, please ask them so that this description actually answers questions and we know what questions come up. And there are some things that I want to share from this experience, what actually is not written anywhere, but what needs to be done in order to actually create also, not momentum, but what you would typically do in an organization. You do something, but you also build, you have to market so that people know what it is that you're building, number one, and also people interact with it, so you actually get feedback on what it is that you want to do, whether it's useful and for whom it's useful, etc. So these are other process steps that we can discuss. And then once we're through this once, I would like us to actually make a round and share, especially of those who have started these different working styles and different areas of work where we have the more creative flows, but also that is something that came into working group Omega, but definitely had energized people. So we picked it up. It's the dynamic energy budget. It's based on biomimicry, and we are hypothesizing that we can actually use it to model how we are sharing funds and our contributions, which are also energy we input into the systems, and how we actually digest and what we turn it into, right? So that's a huge research project, but I think we are keen on looking into how to apply it actually for funds distribution, which would be pretty how do you call it, pretty hands-on, and we can just try it out, for example, in the workflow of creating the token engineering consonance library. But also it is research, so it has to have this creative freedom, or what we used to say, academic freedom. Kind of. It might end up with the insight that it wouldn't work, or not in that sentence, not in one way or the other that we thought it would work. And in research, actually every insight counts. And token engineering has that experiment-driven mindset. Has to, because it's a very complex domain. So kind of it's helping people to find ways to actually move from the industrial age task distribution, bounties, and getting things done, to actually interacting and creating value and sharing value in much more complex and intertwined networks. So it's a research project. Now, today's focus, once we go through this process flow and then add our insights, how we actually put the token engineering consonance library through the process flow, I would love to invite everyone who has been part of the Omega flight till now, and who have joined recently, and who have been contributing or working in this different working style and what we call the work style research, regenerative work style research. Please imagine how we would go through a working group Omega proposal that captures these research aspects, that as a groundwork of Omega. It applies it to itself, but obviously these things are insightful also for decentralized autonomous organization that realize, okay, just automating some processes and buttons, pushing buttons, it's not all. Actually, it's a human coordination problem that we're getting at. and it requires more innovative and imaginative ways and more human ways to actually relate to each other, on top of all this amazing infrastructure that we have with automating financial and accounting flows. So everyone who has contributed, please put on your thinking caps. Maybe it's going to be a bit harder for those who are used to work also in their day job in this creative flow. Ask any questions that you have about the process flow that we have in Token Engineering Commons, and about how you think the work that you have been contributing can be part of the research groundwork of Omega. If you feel that your contribution or what you would love to contribute doesn't fit, then also raise your hand. Even if you don't get to that point, we definitely take it onto the agenda summary and somehow either next week or offline, meaning in the chat, continue that discussion. Because now it's about updating the working group Omega manifesto, the work style session, which will state that we are experimenting with regenerative workflows and inclusive workflows, embedding multiple different work styles. What else? Yeah, I think these are the main points. And then, of course, we should really have every step in the process where things could go wrong really pinned and highlighted, as Matt already did. Thank you. I think he's not here today. But that would be it. Okay. A 14-minute intro already. Sorry about that, but I really wanted everyone to know where they are and how they might fit in. And if not, please ask your questions.
Sebnem, I put it there on the agenda. I also think it's very important for us to sort of like do a demo, or like, which is the first point I put there: constraints curation, practical example, and format guidelines. Like we can go into the Notion page, and there's a couple of there's a Sargam one, and there's one about me. But if you click on it, it's empty, right? So I'd like to. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. But that needs to go into the topic bucket. And if you say this needs, we can put it on the agenda for next week directly. Just make it.
Okay.
I'll help you. Like today is really about token and like the work group groundwork, and next week we can make it about the token engineering consilience library again. So the token engineering consilience library also, again, it's an initiative within, and it has workflows and it has contributors, etc. So everything we're discussing now is partially or fully also applicable to it, other than that we have gone through the process flow of getting it to funding already. So just for everyone to be on the same page again. Okay, cool.
So you want us to imagine how an alternative to the current proposal?
No. It's really like the working group Omega. We have the initiative Token Engineering Consilience Library funded. The working group Omega has contributors and amazing work being done. Right, and the whole token engineering ethics, for example, it was planned as an initiative, but I think it needs to be fed. Not I think, but actually that came out through discussions that it needs to be fed through some research groundwork, and that research groundwork is what we're going to write into the proposal of funding working group Omega. these fundamental contributions.
Okay. But I meant what you wanted us to do now.
So yeah, and basically now those of you who have been doing research groundwork like energy flow dynamic, energy budget, creative flow, and the whole onboarding with the energizing levels, etc. Again, these are all groundwork in working group Omega. Like we're doing things differently already. Now we have to write this into our working group Omega proposal, why this work should be funded, how much, and for whom, who is doing this work, so that we get the people, the contributors acknowledged appropriately. And then also I would, as always, make a point that we describe it in such a way and also think, how can we make these things accessible to token engineers and token economy participants? Like everything we're doing here actually is useful as a token engineering commons, as a public goods for people who might be struggling with the same issues, for example, right? So, okay. So let's go into the Notion, and maybe I'll make some annotations so we can also use it directly. So here basically Matt started with the obvious things, the advice process, informed discussions, but typically, and as you have now been experiencing, before you can put a proposal, there is a formation of an idea and or even fermenting of ideas. Like process step 0 is basically proposal formation. So in that proposal formation working group Omega, for example, oh, it doesn't update directly. Oh, I'm already writing.
Oh, okay.
But it doesn't update on your screen.
Yeah. Here, I'll refresh again.
No, strange. Oh, I have to refresh. Okay, now we're understanding how Notion works. So I have to type and refresh. Let me see. Because now it's refreshed and it's deleted on my end. Wait a second. 1 second. 1 second. We're reverse engineering how Notion works. 0 proposal formation. So now I refresh. Okay. So now in that proposal formation, now Letty, do you remember how token engineering coincidence library formed?
Yes. We were.
So maybe you give a short short
Yes,
intro while I'm also
jumping together ethics, philosophy, process, creative flow.
Mm-hmm. And what else?
We were discussing the Omnifesto. We did the Omnifesto, I think, like in the middle of. And like we wanted to create new things in this embodied state. So we realized that the integral theory was very relevant too, and we were talking about many philosophers and complex thinking theories. And then, because Wilber was too broad, we couldn't just focus on Wilber, because we said, okay, the quadrants and all the integral theory is very relevant to everything, but we didn't focus on the problem. And we did a survey before even talking about Wilson, and the survey was like not very relevant because only the I with the token engineering commons were in the results. So we're thinking, okay, how can we just gather more resources? And I think like we wanted to focus the problem, and we said, well, which is the problem? And it's like if you focus on only one discipline, you are not jumping across the whole crypto flower. So Wilson was setting up the problem, and in the manifesto we said we were moving from Wilson, that is the consilience book, to like embodying a more integral theory with Kirk and Wilber and all the relationship systems we have been buying. And that was like 1 year.
And that's throughout the work and throughout also our exchanges, literally become embodying the wisdom of Web3, which is our tagline. I think people really resonate with, like, why do we think this library has to be different, needs to be different, because we're way beyond, or we need to be way beyond just acquiring knowledge, collecting knowledge, but actually enable wisdom.
Organization. So if the guys came here, it was like this is a kinefin, and we're using this enabling constraints to focus on our omega point, like being this North Star for ourselves to embody this wisdom.
So in short, basically, through this work we came with this unity and diversity as a
that was the research question
as a principle, sort of, right? We have this diverse background, token engineering, ethos, and so on, and we don't want to just subscribe, this is the way, because that's not it. That's not token engineering or crypto economics at all about. But that's why it's also so hard to learn. Like, there is no book, there is no textbook, and will never be, etc. But there are so many insights that the crypto economics flower, drawing from many disciplines, transdisciplinarity, and drawing from many disciplines. Everything that people have ever created frameworks around, all things coordination and all things resource allocation. This is basically how, in the Foundations of Crypto Economics paper, Sherman and Zargam came up with this crypto economics flower that we just took. And all of these hints and then purpose or principles are basically pattern recognition that we're doing. Like, we're recognizing patterns that exist in this domain or in this emerging field, and we're orienting based on those patterns. So there is no recipe or nothing, but just the principle and the purpose, as mentioned for Omega, is the embodying wisdom of Web3. It's a huge purpose. If you think about what that would mean or entail, when we say, this wisdom of Web3, it's this academics background, etc., but also a lot of in between fields, or in between insights that are also new and emerging, like consilience itself. These are the things that we want to pick, test, work with, and really embody. Like, it starts with self-knowledge. And also, if anyone, if something resonates or tickles or again raises a question, please jump in.
So is this Basically, like what should be our North Star when we're writing proposal or thinking of initiatives and writing proposals.
Exactly. So here, maybe after this call, I'll continue editing, but we could say, okay, this is how it was, like a case from the past, an example. This is how we actually, came up with, we should have a library, but not just any library, not a list of, that you go through, but different. And you can also read in the manifesto, like there is this example in the manifesto of when we say our work style is the actions over outcomes, meaning we want to focus on meaningful actions that we can take now versus have a vision of what a library is today and deliver on that vision within a given time frame. Like, for example, exactly. Focusing on outcome would be we set ourselves a deadline, work backwards, break down what needs to be done minimally, and so on. And then we could have within 2 weeks a library put together. We would also have more drive. We would know exactly what to ask for and ask in different ways until we get it, etc. We would ask some hourly rates and be done with it. But we said we will do it differently. And number one, it brought us to this different work style that we need to embed idea. Don't need to go in there, just so we focus. But also it brought, for example, participants like Nick, and who actually have a much more vivid vision, in my view, how a library would become this living library, people actually exchanging with each other information and just consuming and reading linked lists. So things like this wouldn't have happened if we just had a deadline from end to start. The community would have had a library last year already, but we wouldn't have all these insights along the way. And also it helped to coordinate, basically get people together around the direction, but then also co-vision. So yes, so we could basically here in proposal formation, I can help, or maybe Letty, you can also help because you've been part of that creative chaotic process. That we basically in a few sentences says, okay, this is how it worked out, and for future proposals, what to keep in mind, and if you have these principles in mind. And I think, T ethics and ethos, I know it's very broad, but for me, it actually helps to focus. Also, yeah. Also, I would even say Web3 is too large, and we should really focus on token engineering / crypto economics.
Or regenerative focused token engineering.
And that's the thing, like, is it so one of the insights of the past years discussions also is like, what is the common pool resource? Like, if you have participated in any other or in this param parties, etc., our common pool in Token Engineering Commons is obviously the common pool, like this XDAI that accumulates for funding things like the working groups, or other proposals. So, and that is knowledge, right? And it's basically it gets more, it gets shared, etc. And I used to always say, knowledge or these type of commons are not comparable to fish commons, like what Ostrom actually created her theories around, like scarce commons. And in those whole discussions, I don't know how many of those we had in Omega, but in many, many other projects and token communities, actually, it is this understanding around, okay, we're creating these new commons, and mostly digital, mostly knowledge-based, mostly information or code-based, where the economics is different, it doesn't get depleted. But people forget, me included, that those digital goods and services and what have you that are put and have different economies of scale are still put together by people. People who actually can be depleted literally on many, many levels. So like this regenerative work style research is a very ethical topic.
Yes, and
That's what I want
like
to say.
what it wants to focus on, like these region workflows, is exciting the whole collective here in Omega.
Yeah,
Let me put it
there's
that.
something I would like to add also.
Please.
As I was coming to the Consilience library and I didn't really know about the token engineering commons only from like their website and things, so I never really followed the process of like the token engineering academy and these kind of stuff. Or university or yeah, like so from my point of view it was kind of an experience of like which I also had in my previous organization with the artist commons, like starting something from an idea, creating a community dynamic, a kind of like missionary kind of idea of like this is something new, it's about like creating something. And we also like had a lot of volunteers. Then like after a while, like these people they kind of like faded out because they had other things to take care of. So I had like this kind of personal feeling also that if I like contributed to it, but I didn't know like how it worked on the back end, like what's the organization, how's the economy of the system, then I felt a bit like I'm just like contributing to something, I'm not really expecting anything out of it. But like over the course of a few months, I started to understand that there's actually a much larger complexity going on. So I guess it's quite important for like newcomers that are not familiar with the back end of like the whole economic system and the whole funding system behind it to have some kind of understanding of what they're getting into, or if it's okay for you that people just like work and then disappear or something.
Yeah. So I take it that's basically a hint that yes, we should actually explain this also, how the whole proposal up to the economics of token engineering commons works. Like, how do those proposals maybe relate, if at all? They don't currently. But we get funding, and we are, or those proposals should be providing to the public good. But that latter condition is not encoded anywhere, if as far as I can see. So that is, for example, something we can make an improvement proposal, that the proposals, if working group or else, should at least provide some insights or something that is useful to token engineering at large, or token economy participants, even if it's just explainers.
Like maybe just some kind of easy onboarding or something that explains like, hey, this is how the system works if you want to like have some remuneration or praising or I know I'm
Do
speaking
you?
from a very ignorant point of view, but I never really
Okay.
did this stuff. I just like made stuff, contributed it, and then
Hmm.
see what happens kind of approach. Of course, I have my
Yeah.
own organization that I'm like trying and thinking about all this solidarity economy. So I'm like
Hmm.
kind of learning and seeing like if there's affinities. And on the other side, maybe other newcomers, if they join, like that they have a bit of like maybe like a one pager or a little explanation
Yeah.
of like, hey, go here, there, find out, link your wallet or all this kind of basic stuff.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay.
So, Nick, go ahead. You have the answers to that.
Oh no, I was just saying, okay, I'll include that in onboarding.
No, no, I thought the answer is there is the Communitas working group. I thought that's the answer. Like we have weekly community calls and so on, and the Communitas working group
I don't think
creates
they talk about
resources.
that yet.
No, but how do people get onboarded onto Token Engineering Commons?
Well,
Yeah, we need to
they
fix
talk
that.
about
But
how
we
the
don't have
TEC
to.
works.
Okay, so that's the thing. Like we can do it here. What we do here is we're explaining within the Omega context how the token
Yeah.
engineering commons works, right? So, but definitely we could also, give this feedback to the Communitas working group to add you
Mhm.
and basically tell them yeah, about the feedback that we've been trying to do. We have done this, so it is definitely useful, but maybe an extraction of it, uh, as Steph says, really a one pager that explains the token engineering commons work. One hint: everyone knows the token engineering commons handbook, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that should
No.
definitely no.
Where can I get the token engineering handbook?
Um,
Here somewhere.
somewhere here. Mission, get involved.
Go to
Handbook,
handbook.
yeah. So,
I will link it to the in the Omega channel for you.
and this is also something that needs updating with respect to our groundwork. Like there are information about work styles and so on. So this explains actually a lot, the overview, but it's not enough to be able to go through the proposal process without
Right.
hiccups and so on. So.
Okay, so we can add ourselves to the working groups and update.
So we have, okay, Omega should be in there, and if not, it's because it wasn't updated for so long. So that's part of the whole this current update.
Okay.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, so again, like there's a lot of work, groundwork or process work that also needs to be done. Information needs to be put together, updated, and so on and so forth. We've been quite, we adhere to the manifesto, we adhere to the minimal things, I must say. But it was just important that we have some space to figure out how we can work in emergence. I think that was the driving. Ja. Hier ist nämlich schon da oben. Okay. Aber die telefoniert, das kann sie also nicht sein. Okay. Okay, sorry. I got a few phone calls. So that's it. Like we need to update our working group proposal and also our handbook page and so on. But yeah, that's that. So new examples, the regenerative workflow also provides or also contributes to public good of TE. Why? Because it is useful research insights that we can share and we can make accessible to others who are also working in these well, networks that are just connected through some Discord channels most of the time. There are other research going on. So let's so what is new is that we define research groundwork. Research is the groundwork of Omega. So Mart isn't here, and Nate, was it Nate? I think it was Nate who also asked about incentives, or more about speculation, meaning incentivizing for speculation. that might bring short-term ease, but long-term menace to a community. And that's. Do you have any updates there, Nick?
So until the 30th of April, our goal is basically to research current existing, well, do this until the 30th of April.
Yeah, okay. So, but you call it research on incentives, right?
Incentive design research. So I will I'll put it into the, I'll put it into the archipelago. Kind of just formulated it.
Yeah. So, and that actually directly plays into again T ethics. So that is basically why we more or less restructured. We started with a token engineering ethics initiative, but it was just too much coordination, too much pre-planning, and so on and so forth for so many people who are actually in the trenches. It's very hard to, get in sync with working group Omega sessions and so on and so forth. So the idea is to have this research as the groundwork of Omega, and basically on an ongoing basis, we can have research proposals. And of course, they're encouraged if they basically look into token engineering ethics, how to foster transdisciplinarity, unity and diversity, and token engineering or crypto economics ethos. Yeah. So, and anything that contributes to T ethics will be always, and that still will always. So, working group Omega, no matter what happens, even if it's sometimes not funded or whatever, or just one person standing, will always be free and be here for covering all things token engineering ethics, or holding space for ethical concerns and research needs. But also what we did very well in this first trial of our token engineering ethics participatory research is to create, to look at what is coming up. And if we can, if in this group, or we know somewhere else, any other researchers or practitioners actually have a framework that could help people practically deal with an ethical principle, issue, concern, then we want to have this token engineering ethics practice sessions. We should always strive for it, just to have ethical principles, don't do this or do that. So the principles are not described like the 10 Commandments. These are just principles that then come out of research or out of these focus groups that we did, but now they will come out of these research groundwork with a lot of context, cases, people, token engineers or token engineering token economy participants actually having voiced their experience or concerns, issues, etc. around that topic. And with all of that beautiful data and insights, actually, we have a ground to apply any useful tools, frameworks, mental models, gameplays, whatever we can come up with or we know and we have accessible to us in this group or in the network of this group, that we come up with practice sessions, because that's the most important part of this, is it's applied moving research. Like token engineering is nothing like I've ever seen in my research career. It's definitely applied research. It is socio-institutional, techno-economic research, and it is in effect. It's like you're building a rocket ship, because blowing up can cost you as much as a rocket ship almost. 300 millions of USD worth of tokens lost that could have been put to good use. These type of things, but also all the other really ethical issues that are not quantitatively in your face, but actually going on, and it's hard to talk about these topics, etc. Like there's so much around ethics and token engineering ethics that needs to have a space. And that's why whatever happens, we should really take care that token engineering ethics is not dependent on some sort of funding. So if we do this, then we get funding. If we don't do this, then we don't get funding. If we reach out to some external organizations and if we get sponsorship, then we can think about ethics. So that must not be. So anyways, again, that was a bit too much, but I think it's super, super important. What other research is going on?
I'm still doing my thing in the background. It's just going slow because of my life situation. So, but in having some free-form discussions with folks in the Omega channel, I've found ways to apply some of this higher thinking. So I'm trying to create graphics to that end. But I just wanted to let you know that I'm still doing my thing over here and still thinking about it a lot. And it seems like we have a little consent group now started. There's a consent channel where Aloysius and myself and I think Jean are talking about this stuff. So, hopefully that will come to something. It just takes a little bit of time. And I haven't had space to think about that as deeply as I'd like.
Okay, so anything you need? Just a question, the consent, is it part of Gravity or
Well,
the channel?
it seems to me that where the work between Gravity and Omega overlaps is consent. Do you know what I mean? And ethics.
Nice.
And so,
Okay.
it seems to me that the implications of the work that we do would have benefits for Gravity and for, all the people who are starting to actually, more DAOs are starting to connect with Gravity in terms of that. So, but I'm trying to take maybe a user friendly version of Fabian's stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like try to turn it into something.
Okay.
So that's what I've been kind of trying to make. I know that you and I resonate with that Fab for Relate stuff, but can be a little bit challenging,
Yeah.
to get through. So I'm trying to make
Yeah.
it a little easier to understand, and I'm taking some
Yeah.
feedback to try to make it practical.
So I'm locating that as inter-working group omega and I see omega and gravity consent is a topic of, yes, consent, definitely ethics. It also directly applies to an area of concern that we have not gotten to, but it's obvious. Ethics of experimentation that somehow relate to enabling informed participation. So, for example, I learned that many people don't know that token entering commons is the 0th iteration of common stack. So,
Yeah.
that raises
True.
some concerns, right?
Yeah.
In a sense, like, what do they? So actually, then people don't know what they're consenting to, and so.
Yeah.
Number one, I always say that it's not a tech issue or common stack issue. It's a typical issue of this decentralization that people coming from their, experience, expectations, and so on, and their connection to this topic, and expect something. Obviously, it's just one slice that they expect and connect to. But number one, this thing is much bigger. Token Engineering Commons is forming. It is an experiment in and on itself. We applied, tested, and built the first cultural build around an augmented bonding curve. So I'm talking Chinese or any other language that you're not speaking if you're new, right? So how do we get people to understand all of that? I think that's definitely communitas, communitas. And also this onboarding, like enable informed participation. What Nick actually, just to end that, like Nick literally, and we have a cartoon of it on our Miro board. Nick literally enabled or brought that, this inflatable bridge that she was working on in her free time that literally is needed on Omega, in Token Engineering Commons, and literally any other community I'm contributing to. And again, it relates back to regenerative workflows because it has this, what energizes you, why do you think you're here? If you don't know yet, it's okay, So it's super, super cool. And I think the two of you at the very least, and also Manu, of course, and some of the working group leads, like they used to join Omega, but the calendars are filling more and more. So it is actually very useful and very important work, and that when we see overlaps are areas, overlaps are sources of abundance, literally, because you do one thing, you exchange with others, you improve it in many, many ways, and you can use it manifold. That's literally a positive sum game. So number one, pro-social game design principle in token engineering. So I definitely see those two. And Dugadas, I hope it reflects what you said, that it's inter-working group work, Omega, gravity, consent, definitely.
Yeah.
And also,
See, like, I don't know if you remember this, but there's informed consent sort of at the beginning. So you're starting with some tradition, and then you want people to like participate. So for me, there's sort of 4 parts, right? Each of the 4 sections. Here's the thing that we've always been doing, right? The stability and tradition part, right? With the curated stuff that we've already made. And now someone says, hey, I've got this outline of a change, right? And so let's now participate together. This is what we're all doing, right? And so, along the top, and then but once we arrive somewhere, then we have to make sense of it, right? So there's for me, when I get to this portion where there's this chaotic change, right? I might need to say, this has implications for other groups or other DAOs, or do you know what I mean? So that we can then document and process how we're going to deal with that side of it. And then we need to start the informed consent process again to actually do, iteration and implementation and evolution, So that's kind of why I made this graphic, so that, and then you can end up with kind of a working, tradition. And then,
Okay.
so that's why I made
Cool.
this, because I feel like it adequately summarizes what we're looking at.
Yeah, can I add here something? Because I feel there are more spillovers from the Gravity working group, because they were set up in principle to mediate and to resolve these kind of communications problems within developmental organizations and with other DAOs and DOs, which are in this Web3 movement. So I'm seeing in my personal experience, I'm just spilling over from other communities which came to Gravity, or the expectations that Gravity were putting forward in the DAO space, trying to solve their complex problems or their complex organizational liaison. So I'm seeing, and I myself, I'm involved in some DAO to DAO communications or complex thinking for, I guess, Gravity expectations or programs, or just the the purpose of Gravity. So this would be like a DAO to DAO work group, or ethical implications of being iteratively doing this consent, but also, yes, practically implementing that in steps, right? This is like something in one moment of time. So this is like spilling over from other organizations. And I'm doing practical work about this.
Okay.
My point of view, like here in Brussels, my question towards like the token engineering commons in general and in specific like the Omega group is like I'm dealing with the project which is called like residency wildcards. My question is basically, now that I hear that the common stack, and I looked a bit at the common stack, and it seems like the most logical link, like to build it within this environment. Of course, I don't know how to build it. From my point of view, my main question is like, since I've been following a few months and it took me quite a lot of like learning, just like what the hell is this about? The persons that I'm trying to get into this kind of Web3 are persons that have really, really no idea what it is that you're talking about. So is it interesting from your point of view to actually have me inviting other persons that might be interested, but that are mainly working with performing arts or visual art? Their interest is probably a lot about how it links to the traditional economy. And that's also a bit what Rasgosh is about, like how it can go from this kind of Web3 flows into like solidarity economies, which are fully compatible with like persons that have like no knowledge about what these kind of crypto economic systems are. So that's a bit
I
the field
think
that I'm
for
interested
that group, really not the group, the Omega working group that is really, token engineering ethics, ethos, embodying wisdom of Web3. Like literally it is, this group should also challenge like the token engineering first timers or people who've been here, who've been trying to get through this for a long time. But that's exactly the reason why Nick put such an emphasis on onboarding, that it's really open to everyone who is interested, but really genuinely interested. But for example, in this case, I believe the token engineering consilience library, this living library, that buddy system and everything that we have in mind would be a fantastic door opener. It's literally like what a library does in a community or in a city, right? Or I don't know, like and especially because you have so many contributions already in the library, and you have also this idea that you could somehow host readings or what have you. I think we're going to ideate on that a lot more when it is also more concrete, or the time comes closer, that how could we host these consilience library sessions in physical and especially also engineering far places, who likely could benefit a lot from learning about these Web3, or learning about crypto economics and so on. So definitely a big yes. But I think, and maybe even, next year, in a sense, like, let's go through this working group process / creative / energy flow, and let's have that embedded and working. And then maybe we will be even really ready to host anyone, because that is an aspiration, right? But as always, I say this topic is so hard to onboard, I don't know, software engineers and data scientists into. So even for them, it's super complex. But if we go through this one by one, and we have the library that can be more open and more interactive and more accessible in terms of various media and so on, I think it's a real chance to see that aspiration get real.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to go into what I thought. My idea, what's this forming into like this first phase of like this game to help guide the library. So the NFT self discovery game, and I had the arbitrarily the three flows as like these doorways into the library, and going into what like Steph was saying is like the first. Well, it's not the first, but it's like, I kind of view it as like in the beginning, like you have just these like phrases, who owns like token engineering ethics, what's the value of transdisciplinary, what's the value of novelty, and then I forgot what the last one is, and then the symbols are there, and it's for them to pick, but like the process one helps like guide you through like the token engineering, like basic stuff, like what goes on in token engineering, what's going on in the library, and it kind of like helps guide you in this like order, and invites you to like to come and like go through the community call. It's on this day, and then like the middle part is the energy budget kind of thing, and then this is where like the Omegas try to make these connections to like relationships and like all this kind of like current groundwork research that's going on, and then like the creative side is more abstract, and it's probably like the different like videos, different sayings that come up, and that becomes like, yeah, what I'm saying arbitrarily is like the payoff is like you get it, like a little NFT of our gift of wisdom, but like each way it's like trying to get you to like jump the other side of not just being a user, but come on and like explore what's going on. Not only, yeah, it's always kind of coaxing you to participate in the library.
So yeah, exactly. I think these, let me put it that way, onboarding and regenerative workflow research, we're going to experiment whatever research we're doing really hard on the token engineering consilience library. And whatever insights we get from that, what is working, we can add to our regenerative workflow research, as groundwork. So I'm just calling it creative flow and energy flow, just for us to have some nicknames of those sub topics or sub flows that are definitely energized. So, like, these are the research groundwork for Omega, and people capabilities. Oh yeah, capabilities approach, correct. Manu. Manu, do you want to?
He's gone. He
He's gone. Okay.
yeah, he probably has other meetings.
Okay. Capabilities approach contributes to. So that's one issue I have, or a question I have. So in my head, the capabilities approach was meant to contribute to TE ethics, ethical principles that we have already. Enable informed participation. Participation. Okay. The incentive design research definitely contributes to token engineering ethics. Beware of social engineering, meaning manipulation or being manipulative. Beware. Connects to consent and all these nice things. So this is where I see, yeah, and capabilities approach. Manu introduced that. I don't know how many of you were there already. Like Deb, we also had an introduction to capabilities approach. It's a huge, huge undertaking, right? But definitely that speaks to that capabilities and maybe also capacity, what we call here complexity tolerance, right? It's a capacity, not a capability, but things that you need and you need to build as a participant, but also the network needs you to build those capabilities. So because the network depends on your contributions that are determined by your capabilities. I already see an ethical,
Yeah,
ethical issue. Ableism.
The compassionate leadership system, because it's super related with our frameworks, our levels, like the methodologies we are using to evaluate how we are working. So it would be like another capacity we have.
Frameworks and so on. Yeah, you had frameworks, capacity building, and you had added that to the mirror board as well. So this is the research groundwork that we're starting with. It will ask of each one of us who want to contribute in one or many of those research groundworks, like what is our commitment, how much can we put. It could be that your day job requires this of you, and you're applying it, meaning you could make use of it, but also you could bring insights from the field. That is so important. Insights from the field, how this research actually applies to token economies in the wild, organizations that are trying to become decentralized, etc. And of course, we have the inter working group work that is super important for, as mentioned, source of abundance. So each one of us, and I think Nick, if you need help or if it gets too much, please also say in advance. But it would be great that we update basically that part of the Omega Archipelagos, which just has this T ethics participatory research.
Right.
What I can do is I can write this up as the proposal, and I will hope that that write up and this, etc., and everything that you already know about people's energy levels, even you know more, that it will be possible to update the archipelagos accordingly. That underneath Omega, we have then this research groundwork, and underneath the research groundwork, we actually have the regenerative workflow, and so on. And then maybe on the level of the top level description of Omega, at the top level bubble, we have inter-VG or connection to other groups like Gravity, Communitas, and underneath those, we have the people contributing and the topics that they see as being in those areas. And with that, basically, we would be able to update the manifesto, our archipelagos, the working group proposal that goes into advice process. Again, this will be something we will roll over and over again. As you see, it's not easy, or it's not a simple or short thing, but we will work this through so that everyone who joins has the opportunity to continue understanding better the processes, but also that we have this wonderful documentation with links and practical tips, what can go wrong, etc. And we update the Token Engineering Commons handbook with our website, and that will be basically with our working group description.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes, go ahead, please.
I don't know if you've seen these recent things that I've made, but I did kind of. It seems to me that contextually, it might help people to onboard to, a group like ours with a lot of complexity. If you had something where you're like, okay, so you've showed up here, but we're actually, because we're all educated in these ways on the left here, it seems to me that Gravity and many of the additional groups that aren't directly related to the creation of a token or the money or the tech side of this is mostly about doing this step number 2, right, where we're figuring out ways to break up power and educating people about all of these things. Do you know what I mean? And so it might be helpful as a contextualizer to say, a lot of people just skip over and go, okay, well, here's the stuff that we individually think, step 2 is about. So we'll just then say we're creating a DAO. And what I'm seeing is that most people that create DAOs actually kind of combine step 2 and step 3 into one thing. Like, yay, DAOs are just going to fix everything or whatever. But I actually think that we should sort of intentionally break them up. And the reason why I say that is because I feel like there is kind of a process for that even Bitcoin or Satoshi himself would be understanding. And I think we're building out the practical philosophy. Do you know what I mean? On Omega.
Yeah.
So I don't know if this sort of thing helps.
No. I like this very much.
And then beyond that, so I don't know how that could help.
But do you think like the step 2, this bureaucracy, it's a no word for me. So by the way, I think our general or our main working group session, I think for the topic of the day, we're done. But if you want to continue, I just wanted to do it as if you have some more time, because I wanted to get into that. I find it super, super interesting because it's true. Obviously, you've seen, you have contextualized. But at the same time, I think the Token Engineering Commons, that this cultural build, you weren't, I don't know if you were in the very, very beginning.
No.
But it literally introduced, in my view, step 2, and the biggest issues I had with Token Engineering Commons, or the way it is or it is applied, is it seemed to me very, very bureaucratic.
Yeah.
But it's a necessary step, as you said, like this working groups and so on. My position was, for example, to say this is like how any political party and working groups or any political association works. This is, is this it? And However, you need to build out infrastructure, communication infrastructure, the processes, and so on and so forth. And I'm also currently seeing an alternative to how that could work. If it's not bureaucracy, it is the benevolent dictator for life.
Right.
Because you need this accountability, and typically benevolent dictator for life, it's an open source nickname for the leader or of an open source organization. Someone who has spread their hearts out for that before even people got into, and now those people of course have huge respect and trust in the vision of this person. So it's the benevolent BDFL. That's what you need, like a conductor or something. You need to see and actually align yourself with, or say, okay, this is the vision. Is this the vision? Okay, am I aligned with this vision or not? So, but it's
and my
not
perspective on that, and the reason why I put that there was because I do find that there are people in the group who are intentionally breaking up power. On the other hand, there are people who are kind of discovering their own power, their own agency and autonomy, and they're like, yeah, I want more of that. I'm gonna, you know what I'm saying? Because they're still so like when you have a person like yourself or a person like Griff or a person like Livy who've been in these places for quite some time, been in community organizing, they're good at breaking up power, right? But they're also very used to having that same power. Do you know what I'm saying? And so it's a tricky situation, right? You want to create agency and autonomy. You want to create people who show up and do leadership things, but at the same time, you don't want them to slide back into that step one thing, right?
Exactly.
You want to continue them to progress, down the way, and so that's kind of where all of our work, I think, will give a grounding so that we can be able to make sense of where we actually are and evaluate ourselves in terms of where are we on our way to the DAO, and then from the DAO into the deliberately developmental organization, which for me is the next part, So.
And actually, I think what we're trying here is actually put that fourth step, this deliberately developmental organization, or there where you say, okay, every participant needs